This is what an express entry invitation to apply for permanent residence looks like. In this video, I'll be taking you through the entire PR application process step by step. We will clarify those questions that are not very straightforward and help you to maximize your submission without misrepresenting. For those of us who have gone through the process, we have done the heavy lifting. I'm now sharing that knowledge with you. So I promise this will be a value-packed information video. If you're considering PR in Canada, you will get a first-hand look at how well you need to prepare, as I will show you all the questions that will be asked. I made sure to document everything so that this tutorial could be substantial. Please leave a like on this video and subscribe if not already, as that does help my channel and it does mean a lot to me. So let's get right into it. So the assumption first is that you already created an express entry profile or you have already received an invitation to apply for PR. So we are going to continue from there. I promise to do another video on express entry as well. So the next step after receiving an invitation to apply for PR is extremely important, and you should take it very seriously. In this video, I will explain step by step the process on how to apply so that you can maximize your ITA and eventually get your permanent residence. So that's the aim, that's the idea. So what does an invitation to apply looks like, right? It confirms, one, that you got invited to apply for PR. It mentions the immigration stream. It breaks down your score. If you're not able to support the full score that you receive, of course, IRCC will change your score when they evaluate your application based on the documents that are available. So you have to make sure that if your score is lower, as long as it is above what it would have needed to be for that draw. Any additions that increases your score, they're okay, but the focus is on decreases. Your documents must prove that you would have been selected as part of that draw that you were picked in at the time, okay? So let's quickly run through what this ITA looks like. So this is a sample, real-time sample, okay? So you have the date, the profile number here, email, and there, the name of the applicant. We're writing to you about your express entry profile submission based on the info you provided us in your express entry profile. We are pleased to invite you to apply for a PR under the provincial nominee program. So it depends. If you are a provincial nominee, it will state that. Through express entry round of invitation, it will tell the invitation number. Now below you will see some of the criteria. You will see your score. And like I said, you can always pause and go through this. I'm trying to minimize on the time for this video because it's going to be a little bit long. So this is just showing you what the ITA looks like. So let's look at the other page. So it's continuing to show all the different criteria that makes up your score. And then you will see that you have 60 days from the date of the invitation to complete your application. So you have two options. You can decline this invitation or you can apply online for a PR. Okay, you must submit a complete application before, and they'll show a date here. If you want to apply for a PR, you will not be able to submit an application based on this invitation after the date and the time listed above. We cannot give extensions. Important to know. That's why it's important to show you this information for those who are not familiar with it. Now, you can go through this on your own, but I just want to point out this. You can always pause and go through it, okay? If your new score is lower than the minimum point score in the round of invitation from which you were invited to apply, you should decline this invitation to apply. You should also consider declining this invitation to apply if you no longer meet the minimum criteria. Let's say you have aged up since you were invited. That would have changed your score. Let's say you are not able to substantiate a job that you are initially included in your express entry profile. When you look at the score system and you deduct those points, let's say you were invited in a round where the draw was 700 and now you are at 690 because of those decreases. then what they're saying is that you would not have been eligible for that draw anyway, so you have to decline. If your scores increase, that's fine, but as long as it decreases, that's the problem. If it decreases, but it is still above what they cut off, then you are still good to go. But you have to bear that in mind. So you can pause, go through this invitation. The entire information is here for your perusal, but I will not be going through all of that. This is just to give you first-hand information on what it looks like. So you can pause and go through this, okay? It continues here. And for those persons who are potential nominees, I'd say the moment you have become a nominee, depending on the different countries that you have to provide a police certificate for, don't wait on the last minute to start gathering those police certificates. Okay? Have to be proactive, you have to manage your time, and that will not cause any delays for you. So, if the 60-day deadline passed and you have not completed the application, then that's not good. So you want to make sure that you will complete your application within the stipulated time period. So, okay, let's get into it. You will need all of these documents, but we will explore that while going through the application process. So let's begin the application by logging in to your IRCC account right now. So this is for the main applicant. If you included a spouse and dependent child or children, their details will follow in the order of spouse after the main applicant and then the child or the children next. So you go to continue form. So first you see for the main applicant, your name will be here, candidate, permanent residency, and you will see the different form names. So first off, you have personal details. In progress, just go to continue form for each of them and complete the entire field. I'll be taking you through the entire application, all the questions, everything that you will see so that you can be prepared. So after you have completed all the information, a checklist, of course, will be generated with all the documents that you need to upload. But you must note that there will be some documents that you need to send into IRCC that does not have its own designated upload slot. And in that case, you must combine all those documents in one and upload them via the optional section or the client information section. I'll do a separate quick tutorial on the software that you can use to combine, to merge, and to organize your documents. So let's start off with so this is further information. So for the main applicant, personal details, contact details, study and language, application details, representative, work history. So for representative, you will see complete. That's if you had indicated that you're using or not using a representative. So there's some information that you will see that will say complete because the information was drawn from your Express Entry profile. Nonetheless, it's okay to go ahead and say update the form just to see if there's anything that you want to modify. Well, bear in mind, anything that you modify, if it's consequential in terms of adjusting your scores, you have to be mindful of that, okay? So that's your main applicant, all the forms that you will need to complete. And then for your spouse, if you had one included, this is your spouse's checklist as well. Well, not the checklist, but the forms that will be needed to be completed. Like I said, it goes in order of that. And then if you had children on your application, these are the personal details that are required for them. Personal details, study and languages for kids or minors, not much information needed. And then we will start off the application process for the main applicant. And these are the questions, guys. I might be going a little bit fast because these are very general information. The ones that require some explanation and some clarification, I'll spend some more time, but these are just very basic questions. So this is for the name section. Tell us your name exactly as it is shown in your passport or your travel document or national identity document. Last name, first name, as this person ever used any other name. So give you an example where this is concerned. What if you are, in the case of someone I know, what if you're married, but in your passport you have your maiden name, but there are certain documents, for example, your work employment reference letter where they may have included your married name. For example, your maiden as well as your married name, then you want to make that distinction and said, yes, I've been called by mine. If your name is Anita Douglas, and Douglas is your maiden name, but on some of your documents, you may have used your married name. It's just that your passport is not yet updated to reflect your married name. So you would have had, say, Anita Douglas Murphy. Then if that's the case, if you have ever used any other name, then you are required to say, well, Anita Douglas Murphy, even though the name in your passport would say Douglas Anita. And then in your letter of explanation, you would explain that, okay? No misrepresentation around here. Next up, you'll have personal description. So let's see what those questions look like. So tell us personal details. Exactly as shown in your passport travel document. So you have gender, date of birth, country of birth, city of birth, general information. Please enter your height, your eye color, marital status, provide the name of your current spouse, last name, first name, date of marriage. So you see these are those basic questions, okay? Then you have ID documents, tell us passport or travel document. If you have a passport or travel document, tell us about your national identity document, enter the details exactly as shown in the document. Then it will ask if you have a passport or national ID. You select yes, and then if you have another government ID, very basic questions here, okay? Then after you are finished, you'll see a summary of the information you put here. If you made a mistake, you can always go here to modify that information. Now, are you a lawful PR of the United States with a valid U.S. citizenship and immigration services number? If the answer is yes, you say yes. If it's no, you say no. When you scroll below the ID document summary, you will see the info you have completed for your express entry profile. If there's another form of ID you want to add, then you can go ahead and populate the field. If you just have your passport that you want to use, then you can say you can always delete, you can always modify. Basic information so far, right? Now for your immigration history and citizenship. Tell us about your previous applications to Canada, countries of citizenship, and the country where you have lived, okay? Then that's it. Have you applied to IRCC before? Yes or no? Have you applied for a PR before? Yes or no? Do you have a UCI? If you have one, that's your unique client identifier. And if you have applied to IRCC for any visa before, then you have a UCI, you enter that information right here. Countries of citizenship, so it will ask you any country that you have other citizenship, and you go ahead and you populate the field. Country of residence, so if you're in Canada, that's your country of residence, so you put that right there. If you're outside, then you put where you currently reside. What is the province or territory of your primary place of residence, postal code, all that good stuff, basic information. Now it comes down to family. Now we need to know some information about your family. Tell us about your family, okay? How many family members do you have? This includes a spouse or partner, dependent children, and their dependent children, okay? Now, if you're uncertain, always expand by clicking on the question, and this question mark here will expound and give you some clarity. So this includes a spouse, partner, dependent children, include yourself, your children, your spouse. Do not include your parents or any other relatives. If you have no spouse, partner, or any dependent children, you just put one. Okay? Just put yourself. Okay? So it's always okay to expand the question mark to see what the instructions are. The government of Canada does not give financial support to new migrants or immigrants. A person must prove they have enough money that is not bound by debts or obligations to support themselves and their family members after they arrive in Canada. So any amount of persons that you include on the application, please note that you have to prove that you are able to support all of those family members. And then some other explanations. A PR is someone who has been given PR status by IRCC or by immigrating to Canada but is not a Canadian citizen. PR residents are citizens of other countries to help determine whether your relative is a Canadian citizen, blah, blah, blah. So always follow these information through. These are still basic information, okay? And then it goes on to explain step brother or step sister, what that means, adopted brother or sister, just information to help you. And they give you examples of the supporting documents that you will need to supply to furnish with your application. So birth certificate, it must contain the name of the parent. Marriage certificate, it depends on your personal situation. Next up, we have tell us about your immediate family members that have not been identified in the application. So this includes any parent or any spouse or common law partner, any child, including adult children, and any brothers or sisters. If the relative is deceased, provide the date of death. Gender, date of birth, date of death, and these are just other information that follows. Each person that you include in your application, you'd have to enter the details. These details for each of them. All right. So once you're finished, you will see this question. Have you told us about all of your relatives? And then if you select yes, then it will move you on to the next part of the application, which is language or of correspondence. Very basic information here. Language of correspondence, English, or if you want French, whatever options are there. I think it's English or French. You have the option to choose, and then you go next. Then telephone or fax, please provide telephone numbers where you can be contacted. So you provide your telephone number and your country or territory. Okay. Next you have, if you have a fax number, then you would enter that right here. And then you enter a valid email address. Valid email address, this is how IRCC contacts you, through a valid email address. Make sure to double and triple check that your email address is accurate. Provide your mailing address where they can send correspondence. So that includes PO box, apartment number, street address, name. And then complete the rest of that information having to do with your address. Address history. Provide all of the addresses where you have lived in the past 10 years since your 18th birthday, whichever is most recent. And do not leave any gaps because, just don't leave any gaps. You must have lived somewhere every day, okay? Check the list of the form to see information you have already saved. When you click Save and Add, each address will be saved to the list. The fields will go blank to let you add details about another address. And you can use the Modify or Delete button if you want to change details that you have already saved to the list. So go ahead. It asks first if this is your current address. So you will put your current address here. And then since what year, apartment. So it's just basic information here. And the help here tells you write your current home address, complete with your street number, street address, city, town, province or territory, or postal code. So that's just the question. If you are not certain of how to answer, just expand on the question mark and then it will give you some clarity. So this is still basic information, nothing technical there. Street number, street name, address, all of that. Then it takes you to the native language. So first language or your mother tongue, you select and go to next. So all these are basic. Now we are on to the education history. So we will assess your secondary and post-secondary periods of study for eligibility for express entry and use them to calculate your score. You can tell us about each period of study by filling in the fields. Okay, have you finished high school or any other higher education, including university? Yes, the field of study, you enter that right there. What year? Is this my current study? Complete full academic years. All the questions. These are the guys. You're preparing for your PR. This is it, the information first hand. You have it, you know how to prepare. Pause, go through, look what you need to answer, okay? Country of study, city, town, name of school, level of education, and were you awarded a Canadian degree, diploma, or certificate for this study? So if you had studied in Canada for any of the education that you missed, you will see this question. So if you had studied in Canada, then you select yes. And then if you select yes, then for other studies that you did not do in Canada, it will ask you if you have an evaluation done. No. You will see in different forums where people are telling you that you have to get your credentials assessed. No. For first-hand experience, let me share, just not to confuse you. If you studied in Canada and you are not relying on points for your education that is outside of Canada, you don't have to get your credentials assessed. Okay, let me say that again. If you studied in Canada and that's your highest level of study, and you are not relying on your outside of Canada education for points, which anything that gives you points you should support, but in my case, I did not get to the evaluation in time, and so I just proceeded without my outside credentials because it did not affect my score negatively. But it's good to get your credentials assessed by WES or any other assessment agency. But just know that if you had studied in Canada, it's not a must. So if you want more clarity on that, you can drop me a question in the comments. But you don't have to. If you studied in Canada, you can rely on your Canadian study credential, but you will not get any points for education that you have achieved outside of Canada. Just bear that in mind. But just to know that if, for example, your credential assessment is taking so long, like mine did, and I just go ahead, because if you are especially a PNP, then you would have had enough score. So that point that you would have received for outside credentials become insignificant, okay? That's me telling you experience, okay? Experience teaches wisdom. So I've gone through it, and I did not assess my outside credential. In fact, I didn't get it in time. But I did include those educational credentials in my PR application and in a letter of explanation or a note above that I just indicated so that the officer could know clearly that my points were not based on those outside credentials, as I did not get the assessment in time, but I've included them in the PR application process for completeness. Okay? So that's what a good little note helped to do, because I did include them in the education history, but above the ones outside of Canada, I did indicate that please note that this did not form a part of my total score because I did not yet submit an educational credential assessment, but I've included it in the PR application to pretty much account for your educational history and for completeness. So you want them to know that, hey, I did not include this as part of my express entry to claim the points, but it's just for completeness. All right, let's go. Education history, you can always modify any information that you have here. You can go ahead and modify or delete if you have duplicated the information. So now we're on to official languages. Here, it's important to note any documents that are not in English or French must be accompanied by a certified translation and affidavit from the translator, a copy of the original document. Incomplete translations equal delays. Try to avoid that, okay? So can you communicate in English or French? You will specify here. The section will assess your language skills in English or French for your profile. Have you taken an approved language test to assess your skills? Go ahead, enter the details. Now, for the language test taken, I know a lot of persons take the CELTIC test if they're in Canada. If not, if it's the IELTS, you will use this drop-down arrow and you will select the question, the type of test that you have taken, the test version, the date of the test, the results, and the language test result or certificate number. Now, that is found on your certificate, so you'll enter that information here. Then the test pin, then each of the different categories for speaking, reading, listening, writing, you will put the score that you have gotten. And then have you taken an approved language test to assess your French? If it's no, you go ahead and say no. These are the questions, okay? Alrighty, so we are at provinces and territories of interest. In which province or territory do you intend to reside? No, I mainly do MP&P videos as Manitoba, because that's the process I'm familiar with. That's the process I'm fair with. So naturally, if you were an MPNP nominee, then of course you go ahead and select Manitoba. In which city do you intend to reside? You go ahead and put the city here. Have you received a nomination certificate from a province or territory? If you have, say yes. If you were not a nominee, then of course it's no. Then it will ask, well, if you say no, then you won't see the province here. Okay? Now, if you are using a representative or not, then you go ahead and update this form depending on what you had put in your express entry. If you had said, no, you're not using one, then on your PR portal, you might see complete because it's important that information. If you want to change that here, you can go ahead and update the form. Or you can still go update form just to see what is there, and then you move on to this question. An applicant can appoint a person to do business with. If you want that person, person is called a representative. Select yes or no, and then you move on. Okay. Next question, work history. So for this one, your primary occupation. So this is how they will determine your eligibility for the federal programs. You will need to know the job title and the NOC for the primary occupation and for any other jobs you add, as well as for any job offer. So if you were nominated and you have, for example, if you were nominated by MPNP on the international education stream, the natural thing is that you would have studied in a particular field and you have received a job in that field, so that would be your primary NOC code if that's what you had used. So you're saying this is the job duties that I'm doing right now. This is the title of my job. It matches this NOC code. This is the one that you would put here, and you can always find a NOC code that matches what your current functions are. You would put that right here, right? So you have experience in and wants to base your immigration application on that particular job, right? You had studied, and based on what you study, you feel comfortable in that field, that's your NOC code. So dates that you first became qualified to practice in this occupation, and most persons would put the date that they had done some studies relative to that particular NOC code. So that's what you can put here. Most persons, that's what they put. If you had studied in 2009 and you were, say, an IT engineer, then you can go ahead and say, well, 2009. Then you enter that details right there. But your NOC code should match your duties, not your job title. So you always use the Canada NOC to see the duties that falls under that particular NOC. It's not your title alone that you need to look at for that particular one. Once you're finished with that, then you move on to the next one. So this is the Canadian education, the Canadian Certificate of Qualification. So we'll ask if you have a certificate of qualification from a Canadian province or territory. Most persons, it's no. If you were not certified in any province, there are certain things that considered to be certified or certificate of qualification. You can expand this. So if you probably did some certified courses and you have received a certificate of qualification, this is not talking about your diploma or your degree that you have received from the university or the college that you have studied. This is totally separate. And if that's not your case, then you say no. So bear that in mind. This has nothing to do with your diploma, your degree, your certificate from the university or the college that you studied. This is separate. This has to do with a certificate of qualification that you have received from a province or from a territory, which is totally separate from that. If it's no, you go ahead and you say no. So, intended work in Canada. And this is a question that trips up a lot of people. Do you have a valid job offer? Do you have a valid job offer or a job offer in Canada? Only say yes if the offer is supported by an LMIA, and that's a Labor Market Impact Assessment, or qualifies as LMIA exempt under IRCC rules. Just having a letter or contract isn't enough. If you are on a postgraduate work permit and it's open, or an open work permit, that is not what they are talking about, okay? This offer must be for full-time and for at least a year. I know that you're thinking, but I have a job and it's full-time and it's at least for a year and I'm on an open work permit. No, in the context of Express Entry PR, they are talking about LMIA or LMIA exempt jobs. So if you are on a postgraduate open work permit or an open work permit, then the answer is no. Because if you say yes, then that will follow by, okay, asking you for the LMIA number, etc. Okay, so having an open work permit or a postgraduate work permit that's open, it's not what they're talking about here. This is about LMIA jobs or LMIA exempt jobs. And this question trips up a lot of people. It's insignificant if you say yeah, but then you will soon realize that, okay, they're asking for other information that you don't have. So you then realize that, okay, maybe I should have said no. But at least that is supposed to be clarified right now. Right, so you only say yes if it's LMIA approved or full-time and permanent, LMIA exempt. Work history, so we will assess your current and previous jobs for eligibility for Express Entry and use them to calculate your score. You can tell us about each job by filling in the fields. Do not enter any work related to or performed during an apprenticeship process. Check the list at the bottom of the form to see information you have already saved. And when you click Save and Add, each job will be saved to the list. The fields will go blank to let you add another. And you can use the Modify or Delete button if you want to change a job that you have already saved to the list. Do you have any work history? Yes. Since what year? So your current job, you start with that first. You start with the year, the month, and then you can tick that this is my current job. Remember, how to prove your work experience. There are two types of work experience that you have to prove. Canadian and foreign. So for both, you will need reference letters, employment agreements, tax documents showing deductions, pay slips. This is crucial as work must be paid to count. For Canadian experience, it's easier because of the notice of assessment, especially if you had paid tax, or your T4 statement. If you have a valid job offer, you'll need the employment letter, and if applicable, a positive LMIA if you had LMIA job, and this proves your offer is valid on the Express Entry. No, I've done a video that shows some very basic information that you need to make sure is included on your reference letter. Of course, it must not be vague. Letterhead, nicely placed on a letterhead. It must spell out your name, your salary, any benefits. It must also include your title and list the functions of your job. Right, so I'll add that video to the end as an end card so you can reference that as to some of the ingredients so you can help your foreign employer, especially how to make sure that your employment reference letter is not lacking. Okay, so bear that in mind. So this is all about the job, hours that you work per week, the knock code, the job title. Now, for every job, there is an associated knock code. For every job in the world, Canada has an associated knock code, so you just have to find those knock codes that are associated with your job, okay? And you put that right here, the job title, the employer company name, and then you move on. And you continue to do that, and once you have completed all your work history. Now, in the case where you're not able, for whatever reason, to obtain a job reference letter for jobs that you may have completed, you can include that job under your personal history, and in your letter of explanation, you include that you held this job, however, for whatever reason you're not able to obtain. That will not affect your application because I think for the last 5 years, if I am being correct, that's really the jobs that will contribute to your points. Anything after that does not add much value to your PR or your Express Entry. So jobs that you have held over the last, say, 15 years, if you can't get any job letter for that provided it's not the one job that you had held, because if that's the one job that you had held that your entire application is based on, then that's a problem. But if you had multiple jobs over, say, a 10 years period, really up to 5 years is good for your PR and the maximum points that you would have claimed. Well, anything that you wanted to include in terms of job because you had indicated it, you can add it in your personal history gap, just so not to have any gap. If you are not able to get any reference letters to substantiate, but if it falls within the last 10 years of accounting for your personal history, then you can include it under your personal history. And then in your submission letter, you can indicate that you had this job, however, you're not able to acquire a reference letter, but in terms of making sure that you have no gap in your personal history, you have provided that information there. But you wouldn't include it in your work history if you are not able to get a reference letter. The reference letter is important, so if you're not able to get that, then you can put that job under your personal history. But remember, if it's significant to your points, then we are going to have a problem. So if it's like, say, for example, the last 5 years, and you had used it to claim points, and now you can't justify that, then it will decrease your points. So bear that in mind. Any questions, any clarity needed? This is a long video. You can drop it into comment, and I will do a follow-up video. And as usual, you can always go here to modify and to delete and duplicated information. Now you will have this voluntary question. This is optional. It won't hurt you if you participate or not. You can, if you want to contribute to the research and the body of knowledge that it will lend to the decision makers and other beneficiaries of the information. So it's just some questions about your education and work experience recognition in Canada. IRCC will only use this information for research, performance measurement, or evaluation purposes and not to make a decision about your profile or application. Your answers are important and will help improving employment services. Do you agree to answer these questions? You can go ahead and say yes, it won't hurt. Have you looked for a job in Canada in your primary occupation? And what best describes the last action that you took? So you can select, I'm already working in Canada in my primary occupation, or you can select whatever option apply. Have you checked to see if your education and work experience in your primary occupation would be accepted in Canada? You go ahead and answer that question. With whom did you check? You can mark all the areas that applies to you. Then it says some jobs are regulated. You would need a license. Do you know if your primary code or trade is regulated? You go ahead, select your answer. And that's it. Then we go to personal history. Now, this is important. Under personal activities, you are required to provide details of your personal history in the last 10 years or since your 18th birthday if this was less than 10 years ago. You will start with the most recent information under activity type and select what you were doing. Do not leave any gaps in time. You can tell us about each period by filling in the fields. Check the list of the form at the bottom of the form to see if any information you have already saved. To check to see if there is any information that you have already saved, and when you click save and add, each period will be saved to the list. The fields will go blank to let you add another period. Use the modify or delete button if you want to change a period that you have already saved to the list. Provide complete details of military and or paramilitary service for any country in whose armed forces you have served at any time. List any government positions such as civil servant, police officer, employee in a security organization that you have held at any time. Include your positions as held before or after retirement. List any organizations that you have supported, been a member of, or been associated with at any time. Include any political, social, youth, or student organizations, trade unions, and professional associations. Now, for this one, your personal history, you will notice when you're filling out your personal history, do not leave any month, any day unaccounted for. Even if you were employed, studying, or just traveling, IRCC wants to see a complete picture of your past 10 years or since the age of 18, if that was less than 10 years ago. Leaving out even 1 month can trigger delays or a request for more information. Now you will notice that your employment and education details were populated under your personal history, and that's normal. You may also note that there are some overlapping with work and education if you were working while studying, for example. That's also normal. You need to make sure that there is no gap in time. That's the main point to avoid delays and ADR. So under the personal history, you will notice that your work activities and your study activities, your educational activities, those information would be there. So you just need to search between those dates and times and make sure that all the gaps are accounted for under this section. Do not use abbreviations, they say. So you go ahead and you start. If you were employed, you say you were employed. For any period, there should just be no gap in time. Since what year, if it's ongoing or true, you do that. You just complete accordingly. Just make sure that there is no gap in your application. Describe what you were doing through this period, name of the company. Whatever you were doing, you complete. So if you were unemployed, you go ahead and say unemployed. Country where that took place, go ahead and you select the city or the town that activity took place. So it's pretty much just accounting for your personal activities. And you can always modify or delete if there is any duplicated information. And that's it. For the travel history, this is where when you're listing your travel history, make sure that it matches your passport stamps and visas. If there's a mismatch, IRCC may ask for clarification. Double check everything before you submit. So personal details of any trips that you have taken outside your country of origin or of residence in the last 10 years, or since your 18th birthday, if that was less than 10 years ago, include all trips, tourism, business, training, etc. You can tell us about each trip by filling in the fields. Check the list at the bottom of the form to see if the information that you have already saved, if it's there. And then it's the same instruction. You can always go ahead. When the fields go blank, it will let you add another detail. And you can use the modify or delete button to change information that you have already saved to the list. So have you, and if applicable, and family members taken any trips outside your country of origin or of residence in the last 10 years, or since your 18th birthday, if that was less than 10 years ago? If you say yes, you go ahead and enter that information. So again, the travel history, match passport stamp, the exact dates, avoid mismatches, and that will equal to fewer delays. So you go ahead from, to, country that you visited, city or the town, and the purpose of the travel. If it's a tourism, if it's for studying, if it's for training, go ahead and include that information. Once you are done, all the information will be populated here. You can always modify or you can delete duplicated information. So you always have that option before you submit to modify your information. Next up, we have statutory questions. Now, there's something important that I want you to note, but we'll soon get to that point. Have you been convicted of a crime or offense in Canada for which a pardon has not been granted? Go ahead and answer the questions that apply to you. For most persons, that would be no. Have you ever committed and been arrested for, been charged with, or convicted of any criminal offense in any country? And these are questions. I'm not going to read through everything, but I want to point out something very important. Okay? And this is it. These two questions, please read these two questions carefully. This one and this one. Might at first seem as if it's asking the same thing. However, there is a slight difference. When you're completing the declaration section, you'll be asked if you've ever been refused or denied entry to any country or to Canada. And now, here is something important that I want you to note. Something very important. Let's go through the questions first, and then I'll show you what I want you to note. Have you been refused refugee status or an immigrant or a permanent residence visa, including, that's in French, or application to the provincial nominee program, or visitor or temporary resident visa to Canada or any other country? For a lot of people, it would be yes. Unfortunately, the application to Canada doesn't always result in a yes. So for most applicants, you may have been refused a visa to Canada in some form, shape, or form? If it's yes, go ahead and say yes. And once you say yes, then it will give you a details section like here for you to provide the details. Okay, so remember this said specifically refugee status, immigrant or permanent resident visa, including application to a PNP, visitor or temporary resident visa. So if it's yes, go ahead and say yes. When the details pop up, you said okay. You put a brief note. I was refused a temporary resident visa or a work permit or a study permit. You can go ahead and if you have that application number, you can include that. But you're just giving details of the refusal. So this question that says, have you ever been refused a visa or permit, denied entry, or ordered to leave Canada or any other country? Okay, so it's slightly different from this one. Have you ever been refused a visa? So the information that you put here, naturally, some of that will also go back here because it still have here a visa, and this is very vague. So you put back the same information here. Now, what I want to note, those who are in Canada, a lot of persons may be familiar with Flagpoling, where you go to the US-Canada border, especially if you are in Manitoba, you go to the Pembina, the US-Canada border, for the purposes of Flagpoling, meaning that you are not seeking entry into the US, but of course, to get to the Canada border, you have to go through the US border. So that's Flagpoling. Even if you have a valid US visa, if you approach the US-Canada border for Flagpoling purposes for your Canadian immigration process, and you were redirected or turned back, you may have received what is called an administrative refusal from the US Customs. It's essential to disclose this in your PR application to ensure transparency and avoid potential issues with IRCC. Let me say that again. If you have gone to the US-Canada border with the intention of not seeking entry into the US, but you wanted to reach the Canada border, but you have to go through the US border, you may have received what is called an administrative refusal, and the US agents, they are going to record that. So it does not affect your application negatively, but it's for you to disclose. It's important that you disclose that. A lot of persons don't know that. So even if your intention was not to seek entry into the US and you were allowed to proceed to the Canada border office, this still counts as a refusal. So it's an administrative refusal. And the good news is that your application, it won't hurt your application even if you explain that. It's just important for you to do that. Being turned back is an administrative refusal. Declare it in your PR application because you just went to the US, but you had no intention to stay there. Your intention was to go to the Canada border office. You need to declare this under the declaration here. So, have you ever been refused a visa or permit, denied entry, or ordered to leave Canada? This is now where you'd explain. You put, if you were refused a visa, you put back the same information here. And then additionally, you would indicate that you attended the US-Canada border for the purposes of Flagpoling, and you just want to disclose that information right there because that is considered an administrative refusal. And that's a very important piece of information that has gotten a lot of PR applicants in trouble for not disclosing and misrepresenting. Okay? Take that information as a bonus for this video. Alrighty? So, have you ever been refused? We'll go through that, provide the details. Have you been involved in an act of genocide, war crime, whatever? Go ahead and populate the form. And these are the questions that you will be asked. Most of this will be no for a lot of people. Questions are here to help you. You can go through that. Okay, so this is the continuation of the declaration questions. Now, once you are through with the main applicant, you will notice that if you had included a spouse, it's now time for your spouse's details. May not be as much as yours. It just depends on your personal situation. So guess what? Similar information, personal details, contact, study language, work history, personal history. And you will continue form or update whatever it is, but that's the flow of it. The main applicant, the spouse, and children or child if you had included. So it's pretty much going back through similar information that we have gone through. And so let's look at it quickly. Will this person accompany you to Canada? Yes. Last name, first name. Has this person ever used any other name? So similar questions to the main applicant. And then the help will tell you for all of the questions that are asked, you will see question mark here, and that will help you clarify some things if you don't know exactly. You can always pause. Let me just go through this slower so you can pause and read. But we're not going to go through the entire form again for the spouse because it's very similar questions to the main applicant. Just showing you the entire process. You can appreciate it, okay? And make sure to document this for your benefit because going through it might not help others. I wish I had this video to help me to prepare, but you know what? You have it. So that's a bonus. So this will help you with that information. So next, you go through the personal description, marital status, ID documents, immigration history and citizenship, and family. Similar information to the main applicant. So you'll enter the personal details exactly showing your passport. So this is it. I'll be just going through this fast. You can pause and go through this, but this is much like the main applicant. It's just asking this information for your spouse. Okay, but I just want to go through it so that you have the benefit of being armed with the entire application process. And this is a recent application, so you're benefiting from new information, the most recent and the most updated information. Okay, so now we are on to the telefax or the telephone details. See, similar information to the main applicant. Very similar information, so I just want you to see that. Very similar information, it's just for your spouse this time around. This is for your spouse, this is for your spouse. And as usual, any information that you need clarity on, any question, I know it's a long video, just drop a message in the comments. Work history is the same information for your spouse. And once you're done, you can always modify or delete, okay? I've documented the entire process. So this is it, the personal activities, it's the same thing. Leave no gaps, same just as the main applicant. Okay, travel history, statutory questions, it's the same thing. Refuse, same thing. You see, it's very same thing. Next, it takes you to the details for the accompanying child, if you have one included, one or more included on your application. And for the kids who are minors especially, it's not much that is required. So it's their personal details and their study and languages. That's it. So for the kids, this is what you will see. The relationship. Will this child accompany you to Canada? Last name, first name. Has this person ever used any other name? And then personal description. Tell us about the details shown in the passport, gender, date of birth, country of birth, address, the height, eye color, marital status, ID document. And then, are you a lawful pair in the U.S.? And then immigration history and citizenship, UCI, country of residence. Is this child a Canadian citizen or PR? Family, relationship. So we need to know some information about this family. Tell us about immediate family members that have not been identified. So what if you had a child, but that child is not related to the spouse, your current spouse that you included in your application? Now, this is where you would have to include that child's biological mother's information. Note, this does not mean that that person is included in your PR application, but that person is a family, immediate family to that child. So you have to put, and this is where you put that. We need to know some information about that child's family. Tell us about his or her family. Immediate family members that have not been identified in the application. This includes any parent, spouse, common law partner, any child, including adult children. So like I said, that is the perfect scenario. If you have, say, 2 kids on your application, but one of the child's parent is not the current spouse that you have, so this is where you would put that child's biological mom. Don't think that that person is all of a sudden included in your application. No, you're just declaring that person as your child's immediate family members, okay? And that's where you would put that information. That's also a bonus information for you today. All right, so there you go. Just more information, first name, gender, date of birth, all that good stuff. And once you're finished, you will see, have you told us about all of that child's relatives? You select yes, and you move on. Native language. You select that. Official language, can that child communicate in English or French? So you'd select English or French. And then that would complete the details for that accompanying child. Not much information. If you have another child, it's the same thing. If you have, that is a minor. If the child is not a minor, then you may have additional questions to answer, because if the child is of working age, then you will have additional questions to answer. Now, once you have completed the form for every person on the application, the main applicant, the spouse, the child, children, whatever, depending on your situation, then your document checklist will be populated. So for the main applicant supporting details, you will see these are what will be required. Passport or travel documents, it says multiple. Now, for each of these documents, you have one upload slot. What does that mean? It simply means that for passport and travel document, once you expand this, you will realize that it requires your passport details and all the stamps. It also includes your travel documents, meaning if you have your work visa, just click on this and it will expand all that you need. So you have to merge all of this information, but not to make this video too long, I will do a video on how you can merge all your documents in one. So look for that video immediately after this one. And then I will add it to this video as an end card to show you an application software that I've used successfully to do this, to merge all your documents in one, because you will have to send your passport travel documents and it says multiple required, but you have one upload slot. You just need to merge everything in one. Now you will see your checklist is tailored to suit you personally based on the information that you have responded to in the questionnaire that we just went through. So if you indicated that you were married, then you will see that you need to provide your marriage license or your certificate. This might not be true for everyone. If you didn't say you were married, then this would not be in your checklist, okay? Proof of upfront medical, this is required. Now, for this particular one, if you have never done medical for IRCC, you don't have to provide the proof of upfront medical right away. According to IRCC, you can include a blank form here. But I will show you what we did. We included a little note or a little snippet of the IRCC information. We just cut and paste that and then converted it into a PDF. And it shows that IRCC said that you don't need an upfront medical until they request it. And that's what we uploaded here. Okay? So I'll just show you a snippet of that right here. Education or diplomas or degrees required. Employment records. So depending on how many or how much employment you have declared, you will see for each slot that you need to provide your employment record, and that you will merge your employment reference letter, your pay slip, if you're in Canada, your T4, whatever it is. But if you declared 5 employment, you will see 5 different slots for your employment record. Usually the name of your employer would be next here, right beside your employment record. So pretty much this is your checklist, so you know what you need to upload. And this is further information on your checklist. So like I said, it just depends on the number of employments that you have declared. You will see an employment record slot for each of those employments. Proof of means of financial support. So all your bank statements, everything you would merge and put right here. Police certificate. So what if you are a frequent traveler to countries and you have stayed more than 6 months? Then depending on how your personal situation is, then you'll be required to supply police certificate for all of those countries that you have lived in for more than 6 months or 6 months or more. Digital photo, and there's a required standard. This is not the regular passport size photo. Bear that in mind when you go to the photo studio. You have to bear that in mind that you need the PR size photo, not the regular photo. And if you should go to the question mark here, you will see that there are some instructions, and I will show you this in another video regarding digital photo, but I would encourage you to Google a PR photo and look at the Canada.ca website to see what their specifications are. So once you go to the studio and you have that PR photo taken, you need to include as part of your submission that receipt from the photo studio, the name of the photo studio and all that good stuff. I'll show you an example of that in another video. This video is already very long, so like I said, stay tuned to this video. I've got your back where this is concerned, but note that this is not the regular passport size photo. And then you will see the optional documents. This is where your client information goes, and this is where your submission letter goes, or your letter of explanation. So all the documents that you did not see a slot for upload, for example, your PR photo receipt that you have taken it, the name of the studio, your letter of explanation should start this. It should be at the top of this, your client information or your submission letter. And then you will have, if you were a provincial nominee, you would include your nomination certificate here. You would include anything else that is not provided for in terms of a slot. And I will do a separate video on that. But just note that you want to make sure you have a good submission letter. It should not be too wordy, too long and unnecessary. It should be to the point and to clarify anything that you have in your application, and that's where it will go. It says it's optional, but I think it's mandatory if you're submitting an application to submit a letter of explanation or a submission letter to clarify anything that could be misinterpreted in your submission. So that's where you would enter that information. Again, if you have other things that you want to add here, then you just merge everything into one document. So this would be the supporting documents for your spouse if you had declared a spouse in your application. Similar, you will see all of the information required, which would be similar to yours. And then also the spouse would have a kind information or a submission letter area here. And then you would see the supporting documents for your kids. Not much if they are minors required. Passport, travel documents, digital photo. Again, the digital photo is not the regular size photo. You have to be specific when you go to the photo studio to let them know it's the PR photo. It's slightly different it's bigger than the regular passport size photo. Proof of upfront medical, again, I'll do in another video, show you what I did, but you can upload a blank page. That's what IRCC said. Upload a blank page and they will direct you when to get your medical done. Birth registration certificate for your kid, and you put that there. Also under your child, if you had declared one, then you will see a submission area. If you don't want to add anything here and just use one submission, it's fine. But I always say if they provide a client information, it's okay to just submit something. Even just a short letter to say included in this application is whatever is always good to have a submission. So that is it for your child. If you had more than one children, then it would be the first one and the second one, same details. If you are minors, and then that's it. Now, this is the fees section. Everyone will look different, but you can use this information to do a calculation. This is for a family of 4, okay? That's main applicant, spouse, and 2 kids. And this is what the fees look like. So for the PR application, it's $950. The right of permanent residence is $575, and this is a fee that you don't have to pay upfront. But I'd say pay everything upfront so you can avoid delays. You don't have to pay some of the fees upfront, like the right of permanent residence fee and I think the biometric fee. Even if you had a biometric done within the last 10 years for a PR, you will be required to do another biometric. Okay, but I would say just pay all your fees upfront, because if your PR is not approved, your fees, except for the processing fee, it will be returned to you. So just pay everything upfront to avoid any delays, to avoid them pausing your application to send you an additional document request or send you instruction to say, okay, you need to pay the fee so you can move on to the next step. But, you know, everyone's situation is different, but this is what it looks like for a family of 4. So this is the same, $950 for the PR, $575 for the right of permanent residence. For the biometric, it would be $170. For the permanent resident application fee for spouse, it's the same as the main applicant, $950. Like I said, this will be different for everyone. You can just see what situation applies to you and you can do some calculation. Permanent resident application for children, if it's 2, then it's $520. If it's 1 child, then it's $260. So you can do your own calculation based on what you're seeing here. But this is for a typical nuclear family with 2 kids. And that's $3,040. Yes, I know it's not a cheap process, but that is it, right? So you're benefiting from this information firsthand, okay? So you can be guided. If it's just you alone, then you can calculate how much that would cost. So you know that is for the PR, the right of PR, and the biometric. And then your fees would be drastically cut, okay? So bear that in mind. So next up we have, once you have uploaded all your documents, you will see, important to note, please label your documents appropriately. For the digital photo, you will have digital photo / or other travel documents. Just make it easy for the immigration officer to identify the document. Name it accordingly. So for example, here you see I have a medical blank form, right? Here, birth certificate. So you just label your document so it can be easily understood what is contained there. All right, so that is important. So this pretty much, after you have uploaded your document, you will see that it's uploaded, but it's not yet submitted. So you do that after you have put everything together, then you will see your checklist. So this is for the main applicant. You'll see that everything is uploaded, but it's not yet submitted. And you will see and get an idea of everything that you have uploaded. You will also see that for your spouse. And then you will also see the summary once you are ready and you're heading to the big finish where you're going to submit your application. So you will see a summary of the fees again. That's what we showed before. And then you will be taken to this declaration page. Go through that. As usual, you understand any false statements or concealment of a material fact may result in admissibility to Canada and may be grounds for my prosecution or removal. You can go through this. And after you have gone through that, then you will say that I hereby or I agree that by submitting this application and electronically signing the application, I give a name, last name, solemnly declare that the info I've provided is true and that the documents I'm submitting in support of my application are genuine and have not been altered in any way. Then you will be asked your security question for your GIC, that's your secure IRCC secure account. You enter that here. And then you will be taken to this page, select I agree, and then transmit and pay. You'll see a breakdown of the fees again here. And then once you pay, you see that your transaction was approved. You'll see the amount that you have paid, the transaction type, the code, the reference number. Voila! Congratulations, you have successfully submitted your application or your profile. Now, that's it. That's the entire PR application process. I have documented every single question for your benefit because I know that information kept to oneself doing nobody any good. It's important to share the information just to make the lives of other persons who are aspiring to get PR in Canada. I know that this information will benefit you. Like I said, please like the video. It does help to spread the information to other people. This channel is very small, relatively new. And so I depend on you to have this information spread. But share it in groups that you are so persons can benefit and can be prepared ahead of time, knowing exactly what to expect. This questionnaire that we have gone through is the entire PR application process. It prepares you. You know exactly what to do. A lot of persons don't enjoy that benefit, that luxury of knowing exactly what the questions are and how to fully prepare. And if you have any questions, if you have any clarity, this is a long video. You might have to watch it in about 3 different parts. But for me, when I'm watching long form videos that have value-packed information, what I do, whatever I'm doing, instead of watching the TV, instead of scrolling social media, I'll just let it play and I'll listen and then I'll occasionally look to see. But it's value-packed information. I know that you have gotten some value that I did not get when I was doing my application. And it's because of what I've learned, when you may not be so lucky to get an ADR for clarity on certain things, but you just might get like a rejection for an incomplete application. It's important that you are fully prepared. And there's so much other things to cover. But you have seen firsthand a full application process for a PR. And I think this is filled with a lot of value. Not bragging, okay? Now, how to format documents for work experience. Of course, for everything you will combine your pay slips, your reference letter, employment letter into one PDF because there's only one upload slot per job. So merge and organize it well. Like I said, I'll do a separate video on that. Stay tuned to this channel. This is all about MPNP and PR, life in Canada, okay? For the medical exam, it's no longer required upfront. So like I said prior, IRCC will request the doctor submission. So you can just show a blank page, or if in my case, I just take a snippet of what they say about not having to provide upfront medical. If you have never done one before, I'll show you what I do in another video. Stay tuned. And then for the use of representative form, you need this only if your application is being submitted by an immigration lawyer. If not, then it's not required. Optional documents, but not so optional. This is your catch-all section. That's your letter of explanation where I showed you the client information area. So any missing documents or any context that you want to provide, this is the section that you will provide. Merge all of these important information here. That's personal letters to IRCC about your situation and why you are a strong candidate. Always love a good submission letter. So can you change anything after you have submitted your PR application? Well, you cannot edit the portal, but you must keep IRCC updated. And to do that, you will use a web form to notify them of changes. For example, your address, your marital status, and if there's a new child added to the family, if your spouse gave birth, etc. However, you cannot add additional documents that you have failed to disclose in the application unless they ask you for something. So when you send in a web form, it's just for those type of changes here, where it's not to include documents that you have missed or failed to include in your application. And you will see on your invitation to apply where they would have stated that information, or on your acknowledgement of receipt, they would have included that information. So bear that in mind. Also bear in mind that honesty is key. Always be upfront. It protects your PR process and your future in Canada. So PR does give you certainty and the ability to keep building your life in Canada. This is one application you cannot afford to mess up. If you're serious and you feel as though you are not capable, then you can book a consult or let someone review your file. Okay? You can have someone review, not do your submission for you, but review your file. Okay? And if you want recommendation for someone who can review your file, I can share that information, you can just ask in the comment. I use that person to just review my file. And some of the value added information that I was able to share with you today is because I used that person to review, just to look at everything that I have, and it lends some value. And I am now able to impart that knowledge to you. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. Hopefully, please do like the video, subscribe, and comment. I hope that you have received some real value-packed information from this video. As usual, if you have any questions, any clarity, please drop it in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. And I do welcome you to your PR journey in Canada, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.